Hi, my name is Jake. I'm 34 years old. My wife, Ashley, is 32, and I never thought I'd have to write something like this about us. But here I am, ready to spill everything in detail, to confess, so to speak, to tell you a story filled with betrayal, revenge, and a wedding that went sideways faster than a $2 toupee in a hurricane. But first, let's rewind a few weeks so you can experience everything just like I did. Okay, let's paint a picture. Jake, that's me, ex-Army Ranger, now a software developer. Because hey, someone's got to build those apps, right? Is sprawled on the living room floor, surrounded by a chaotic mess of CDs, vinyl records, and digital playlists. His mission, should he choose to accept it, is of paramount importance. Crafting the perfect wedding playlist. Forget the flowers, forget the cake, the music, that's what sets the mood. And Jake, a connoisseur of 90s nostalgia, is taking this very seriously. Think deep cuts, the kind of jams that make you want to pull out your old flannel shirt and do the Macarena. CNC Music Factory, Spin Doctors, maybe even a little bit of Ice Ice Baby, for a touch of ironic brilliance. He's envisioning the dance floor packed, guests grooving, reliving their glory days one power ballad at a time. Ashley, my soon-to-be wife, was supposed to be lending a hand, offering her musical expertise, maybe suggesting a Spice Girls track or two. But she was busy. That word had become her mantra lately. Busy with last-minute details, which, as far as I could tell, mostly involved an endless parade of perfume bottles. Our living room had transformed into a fragrant war zone, a clash of competing scents that would make a department store perfume counter look like a minimalist haven. And one particular aroma kept assaulting my senses. It was musky, definitely, with this strange undercurrent of cinnamon. It was nagging at me, this scent, like a half-remembered dream. I knew I'd smelled it before, but the memory was just out of reach. It was driving me crazy. Ashley, when I mentioned it, just brushed it off a little too quickly, I thought, claiming it was her new signature scent. But something in her eyes, a flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher, made me wonder. Was it really just perfume? Or was it something more? This tiny, almost insignificant detail, this fleeting whiff of cinnamon-laced mystery, was like a single rogue thread on a meticulously woven tapestry. Pull it, and who knows what might unravel. What other secrets was Ashley hiding behind that carefully constructed facade of bridal bliss? My grandpa, a man of few words but immeasurable wisdom, used to say, "Jake, life's a dance. Sometimes you lead, sometimes you follow, but you always gotta keep moving." He was a man who embraced the flow, a true believer in going with the tide. And as I finalized that playlist, adding a little Cotton Eye Joe for good measure, because who doesn't love a good line dance? I felt that familiar sense of calm settle over me. Sure, Ashley was a bit preoccupied with her details. But hey, it was our wedding. A little pre-wedding jitters were perfectly normal, right? She was probably just stressed about making sure everything was perfect. I mean, who wouldn't be? We were about to embark on a new chapter, a lifelong adventure together. And even though she was constantly glued to her phone, whispering in hushed tones, I just figured she was coordinating with the bridesmaids, making sure the flower arrangements were on point, the usual wedding chaos. I wasn't worried. Not one bit. Grandpa always said, "Trust your gut, Jake, but don't let it turn into a dictator." And my gut was telling me everything was fine. We were solid, Ashley and I. We'd weathered storms together, faced challenges head-on, and come out stronger on the other side. This was just another bump in the road, a minor hiccup on the journey to happily ever after. Besides, I had a killer playlist to finish, and a wedding to attend. The rehearsal dinner was a whirlwind of handshakes, hugs, and awkward small talk. Family members I hadn't seen in years emerged from the woodwork, each with their own unique brand of helpful advice and unsolicited opinions. Ashley's extended family was a force to be reckoned with, a boisterous bunch with a penchant for loud laughter and questionable dance moves. My side of the family, on the other hand, was a bit more reserved, a collection of polite smiles and carefully measured conversations. It was like two different ecosystems colliding, a social experiment waiting to happen. And then there was Michael, Ashley's ex. He showed up with his new girlfriend, Sarah, who also happened to be one of Ashley's closest friends. Talk about a recipe for disaster. The air crackled with a strange tension, a mix of nostalgia and underlying awkwardness. Michael, ever the charmer, kept giving Ashley these remember-when looks that could melt glaciers. And Sarah? She was just too friendly, a little too touchy-feely, a little too eager to reminisce about old times. It was like they were trying to rewrite history, to erase the past and create a new narrative where they were the stars of the show. But I wasn't buying it. I raised my glass, a forced smile plastered on my face. To the past, I announced, my voice echoing through the room. May it stay where it belongs. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. I saw a flicker of something in Ashley's eyes, a mix of defiance and guilt. No, it couldn't be. I was just imagining things. Pre-wedding jitters, remember? But as the night wore on, that nagging feeling in the back of my mind refused to be silenced. What was going on? Was there something I was missing? Wedding morning. The air was thick with anticipation, a strange cocktail of excitement and nervous energy. I woke up with a knot in my stomach, a feeling I hadn't experienced since my first day in basic training. Ashley was already up, flitting around the house like a hummingbird on speed, barking orders at her bridesmaids, who looked like they hadn't slept in days. It was a scene of organized chaos, a whirlwind of hairspray, makeup, and frantic whispers. I tried to stay out of the way, grabbing a quick cup of coffee and retreating to the relative calm of the living room. I wanted to run through my vows one last time, make sure I didn't mess anything up. I reached for my wedding ring, a family heirloom passed down from my great-great-grandfather. It was a simple band, but it represented so much more than just a piece of jewelry. It was a symbol of family, of tradition, of the promise I was about to make. But it wasn't there. I checked the box where I'd left it the night before. Empty. Panic started to set in. I searched the entire house, turning over cushions, rummaging through drawers, even checking the refrigerator. Hey, you never know. But the ring was nowhere to be found. Have you seen my ring? I asked Ashley, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. She barely glanced up from her phone. No, she said curtly. Maybe you should stop panicking and focus on getting ready. Her dismissive tone grated on my nerves. It wasn't like me to lose things, especially something this important. And the way she just brushed it off like it was no big deal made me uneasy. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that something was missing, besides just the ring. But I pushed the thought aside. It was my wedding day. I wasn't going to let a missing ring ruin it. Everything was going to be fine, right? The church bells chimed, a joyous sound that echoed through the crisp morning air. Guests were arriving, dressed in their finest attire, their faces beaming with excitement. I stood at the altar, a nervous flutter in my stomach, trying to compose myself. Ashley was late. Not fashionably late, but genuinely, worryingly late. The best man, bless his soul, tried to make small talk, but I could barely focus. My mind was racing, replaying every moment of the past few weeks, searching for a clue, a sign, anything that could explain her tardiness. Was she having second thoughts? Had she changed her mind? The thought sent a chill down my spine. Finally, the music started. The doors at the back of the church opened, and there she was, Ashley. She looked breathtaking, absolutely stunning, like a vision in white. As she walked down the aisle, her eyes met mine, and for a moment, everything else faded away. It was just us, just Ashley and me. But then, as she passed Michael, who was sitting in the front row with Sarah, she leaned in and whispered something in his ear. I couldn't hear what she said, but I saw his reaction. A smirk, cold and calculating. It was a look that made my blood run cold. What had she said? What could she possibly have whispered that would elicit such a reaction? The question gnawed at me as the ceremony continued. I went through the motions, reciting my vows, exchanging rings, which we found, by the way, in the closet where the shoes are. Strange but okay. But my mind was elsewhere, trapped in that single, chilling moment. The smirk. It was a puzzle, a piece that didn't fit. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that it was a piece of a much larger, much more disturbing picture. What was going on? What was Ashley hiding? And what did Michael have to do with it? Okay, you're right. It is your story, and you have the right to decide how it unfolds. My apologies for being overly protective of the narrative. Here's part 6, as you requested. The reception was a swirling kaleidoscope of noise and forced cheer. The band, bless their cheesy hearts, launched into Livin' on a Prayer. And the dance floor became a mosh pit of well-intentioned but rhythmically challenged guests. I stood there, glass of champagne in hand, trying to plaster a smile on my face while a gnawing feeling churned in my stomach. It was like that time I ate a whole gas station burrito and regretted it for the next 3 days. Only this was worse. Much worse. I was giving a toast, some generic, heartfelt speech about love and commitment, but my mind was a million miles away, replaying every interaction with Ashley, every stolen glance, every whispered word. Something wasn't right. Something was seriously off. Then Michael stood up. He cleared his throat, tapping a spoon against his champagne glass, the clinking sound cutting through the din of the party. "I have an announcement," he said, his voice dripping with a smugness that made my teeth itch. He held up his hand, silencing the room. All eyes were on him, including Ashley's. She looked nervous, more nervous than a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. "Ashley," Michael began, a predatory gleam in his eyes, "and I have a confession to make." My blood ran cold. The room seemed to shrink, the music fading into a distant hum. I knew in that moment that whatever he was about to say would change everything. We've been seeing each other," he said, the words hanging in the air like a toxic cloud. A collective gasp rippled through the room. I looked at Ashley. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. "It started a few months ago," Michael continued, oblivious to the devastation he was wreaking. "We reconnected, and, well, sparks flew." He actually said, "sparks flew," like we were in some cheesy romance novel. We couldn't deny our feelings for each other. He paused, as if expecting applause. "So," he said, raising his glass, "to Ashley, my true love, my soulmate." He looked at her, that same sickening smirk plastered on his face. Ashley didn't move. She was frozen, like a deer in headlights. The room was silent. You could hear a pin drop. And then Sarah, Michael's girlfriend, stood up. She took a deep breath, her voice trembling slightly. There's more," she said. "Ashley and Michael, they've been planning this for months. They were going to run away together after the wedding." The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, murmurs. I stood there, numb, my mind struggling to process what I was hearing. Ashley, my Ashley, the woman I loved, the woman I was about to spend the rest of my life with. She had been cheating on me, with her ex, and they had planned to humiliate me in front of all our friends and family. The champagne glass slipped from my hand, shattering on the floor. The sound, sharp and sudden, cut through the chaos. I looked at Ashley, my eyes searching hers for an explanation, for some sign that this was all a horrible mistake. But all I saw was guilt, and something else, something cold and calculating, something I didn't recognize. And in that moment I knew. My world had just been shattered. The world swam back into focus, a distorted, surreal version of itself. The noise of the reception, which had moments before been a cheerful hum, now felt like a cacophony of judgment, each voice a separate accusation. I looked at Ashley, really looked at her, and it was like seeing her for the first time. The woman standing there, pale and trembling, wasn't the Ashley I knew. It was a stranger wearing her face, a mask of deceit and betrayal. My mind struggled to catch up, to process the sheer magnitude of what had just happened. It was like being told the sky was green, or that water ran uphill. It defied logic, it defied everything I thought I knew about her, about us. My initial reaction wasn't anger or even sadness. It was disbelief.
Pure, unadulterated disbelief.
This couldn't be real. It was a nightmare. A cruel joke being played on me by some sadistic cosmic comedian. But the expressions on the faces around me, the shocked whispers, the pitying glances, confirmed the awful truth. This was real. Ashley had betrayed me, publicly, humiliatingly. I felt a strange detachment, like I was watching this unfold from a distance, observing the carnage from behind a pane of glass. I couldn't feel anything. Not yet. The shock was too profound, the wound too deep. I was numb, frozen. Someone, I think it was my best man, bless his confused heart, tried to say something to me, some words of comfort, but they just bounced off me, meaningless sounds in a world that had suddenly lost all meaning. Ashley was trying to say something too, her voice a choked whisper, but I couldn't hear her. Or maybe I just didn't want to. I didn't want to hear her excuses, her justifications, her lies. I didn't want to know why. Not yet. All I knew was that I had to get out of there. I had to escape the suffocating weight of their betrayal, the pitying stares, the suffocating atmosphere of a celebration turned into a wake. I turned and walked away, leaving behind the wreckage of my life, the shattered pieces of my heart scattered across the dance floor like confetti after a particularly disastrous party. I didn't know where I was going, or what I was going to do. All I knew was that I had to get away. I had to find some space, some silence, some semblance of sanity in a world that had just turned upside down. I stumbled out of the reception hall, blinking against the sudden brightness of the late afternoon sun. It felt surreal, like stepping out of a movie theater after a particularly intense film, the real world seeming strangely disconnected from the drama I had just witnessed. Except this wasn't a movie. This was my life, or what was left of it. I fumbled for my keys, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get them into the ignition. I needed to get out of there. Fast. I needed space, air, anything to break the suffocating grip of the shock that had paralyzed me. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove. My truck, my trusty old Ford F-150, became my sanctuary, a metal cocoon shielding me from the world outside. I turned on the radio, flipping through the stations until I found something, anything, to drown out the thoughts swirling in my head. And then there it was, a familiar riff, a blast from the past, a lifeline to a simpler time. Smells like Teen Spirit. Nirvana, the soundtrack to my teenage angst. I cranked up the volume, the raw energy of the music washing over me, a welcome distraction from the chaos of the day. I drove for hours, the road stretching out before me like an endless ribbon, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. I didn't think about Ashley or Michael or the wedding or anything. I just drove. The music, the open road, the solitude. It was a form of escape, a way to numb the pain, to postpone the inevitable reckoning. I ended up at some roadside diner, a greasy spoon with flickering fluorescent lights and the aroma of stale coffee. I ordered a burger and fries, mechanically shoving the food into my mouth, not tasting a thing. I was a ghost, a shell of a man, wandering through the ruins of my former life. The waitress, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, gave me a sympathetic look. She probably thought I was just another heartbroken guy, another casualty of love gone wrong. She had no idea. She had no idea the depth of the betrayal, the scale of the devastation. And I wasn't about to tell her. I paid the bill, left a generous tip, because, hey, even broken-hearted guys can be polite, and got back in my truck. The night was dark now, the stars twinkling in the vast expanse of the sky. I looked up at them, those distant points of light, and felt a pang of loneliness, a sense of isolation that I had never experienced before. I was alone, truly alone, and the reality of it, the sheer weight of it, threatened to crush me. I pulled into the driveway of my apartment, the familiar sight of my little bungalow offering a strange sense of comfort. It was a mess, I'll admit. Laundry piled up in the corner, dishes stacked in the sink, a testament to my pre-wedding neglect. But it was my mess, my space, a refuge from the storm that had ripped through my life. I stepped inside, the silence amplifying the emptiness I felt inside. It was like the apartment itself was mourning with me. I sank into my favorite armchair, the worn leather conforming to my body like a long-lost friend. I closed my eyes, trying to shut out the memories, the images of Ashley and Michael, their smug faces, their whispered words. But they were persistent, like unwelcome guests refusing to leave. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd missed something, some crucial detail that would explain everything. It was like a puzzle and I was missing a piece. Or maybe I had the pieces, but I wasn't arranging them correctly. I got up, restless, and started to pace the room. My gaze fell on the wedding photos, scattered around the apartment like landmines of painful memories. Ashley and I smiling, happy, in love. Or so I thought. I picked one up, a picture from our engagement shoot. We were laughing, our eyes sparkling with joy. Felt like a lifetime ago. I studied Ashley's face, searching for a hint of deceit, a flicker of dishonesty. But all I saw was the woman I thought I knew, the woman I had trusted with my heart. I flipped the photo over, my fingers tracing the date written on the back. A few months ago, around the same time Michael had reappeared in our lives. A coincidence? I doubted it. My mind started to race, connecting the dots, piecing together the fragments of the past few weeks. The perfume, the hushed phone calls, the stolen moments. They all seemed so insignificant at the time, easily dismissed as pre-wedding stress. But now they took on a new meaning, a sinister significance. I grabbed my laptop, determined to delve deeper, to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I started with social media, scrolling through Ashley's profiles, looking for anything out of the ordinary. And then I saw it. A comment on one of her posts, a seemingly innocent message from Michael. Looking forward to Saturday, he had written, and below it an emoji, a winking face. It was a small thing, a seemingly insignificant detail, but it was enough to ignite a fire within me. A fire of anger, of betrayal, of a burning desire to know the truth. I was going to find out what happened. I was going to uncover every secret, every lie, every hidden motive. I was going to become a detective, a one-man army on a mission to expose the truth. And I wouldn't rest until I had all the answers and of course brutal revenge. He destroyed my wedding. I'm going to destroy his life. The doorbell rang, jolting me out of my obsessive online sleuthing. I wasn't expecting anyone. It was late, well past midnight. I hesitated, a sense of unease creeping over me. Who could it be? I peered through the peephole and saw Sarah, Michael's girlfriend, standing in the hallway. She looked pale, her eyes red and swollen. I almost didn't open the door. The last thing I wanted was to deal with her, to hear her excuses, her justifications. But something in her demeanor, a hint of desperation, made me change my mind. I opened the door, a coldness in my voice. "What do you want, Sarah?" I asked. She didn't answer right away, just stood there, fidgeting with her hands. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling. I need to talk to you, Jake," she said. "It's about Ashley and Michael." I crossed my arms, my expression hardening. "I think I've heard enough about Ashley and Michael for one lifetime," I said. "Just go." But she didn't move. "Please, Jake," she pleaded. "You deserve to know the truth." I sighed, a wave of exhaustion washing over me. I knew I shouldn't listen to her, that it would only make things worse. But a part of me, a morbidly curious part, needed to know. I stepped aside, gesturing for her to come in. She hesitated for a moment, then stepped inside, her eyes darting around the apartment as if she expected someone to jump out at any moment. I closed the door, the click echoing in the silence. "Okay, Sarah," I said, my voice flat. "Start talking." Sarah sat on the edge of the couch, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She looked like she was about to confess to a crime. And in a way she was. I'm so sorry, Jake," she began, her voice choked with emotion. "I know this doesn't excuse anything, but I never wanted any of this to happen." I just stared at her, waiting for her to get to the point. "Ashley and Michael," she continued. "It wasn't just some random affair. It was planned." My stomach clenched. I had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed, out loud, made it all the more real. "They've been seeing each other for months," Sarah said. "They reconnected at a party, a few months after you and Ashley got engaged. They They said they were meant to be together. She paused, taking a shaky breath. But that's not all, she added, her voice barely a whisper. It wasn't just about passion or romance. It was about money. My eyebrows furrowed. Money, I repeated, confused. What are you talking about? Sarah hesitated, her eyes darting around the room as if she was afraid someone was listening. Ashley, she said, her voice trembling. Ashley's family. They're in debt. A lot of debt. And Michael, he's rich. Filthy rich. They plan to run away together after the wedding, take the money and leave the country. The pieces clicked into place. The perfume, the hushed phone calls, the stolen moments, it all made sense now. It wasn't about love. It was about greed. They had used me, manipulated me, played me for a fool. And the worst part? They almost got away with it. They were going to leave me with nothing, I said, my voice hollow. They were going to take everything. Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. I know, she said. I tried to stop them, but they threatened me. They said they would hurt me. I looked at her, a mixture of anger and pity swirling inside me. She was a victim too, caught in their web of deceit. But that didn't excuse her complicity. She had known all along, and she had kept silent. The revelation of Ashley and Michael's motives ignited a fire within me. Not just anger, but a burning desire for justice. Or maybe it was revenge. I wasn't sure. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. They had humiliated me, betrayed me, and tried to steal everything from me. And now it was my turn. I wasn't going to sit back and lick my wounds. I was going to fight back. I was going to make them pay. I looked at Sarah, who was still sitting on the couch, her face buried in her hands. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Why didn't you say something sooner? She looked up, her eyes filled with regret. I was scared, she said. They're powerful people, Jake. They can do anything. I nodded, understanding her fear. But fear wasn't going to stop me. I'm not afraid of them, I said, my voice hardening. I'm going to expose them for what they are. I'm going to make sure everyone knows the truth. Sarah looked at me, her eyes wide with disbelief. You can't, Jake, she said. They'll destroy you. I smirked, a cold, determined smile spreading across my face. Maybe, I said, but I'm going to destroy them first. I stood up, the adrenaline coursing through my veins. I felt a strange sense of calm, a clarity I hadn't felt in days. I knew what I had to do. I had to plan my counterstrike. I had to gather my forces, assess the battlefield, and devise a strategy that would bring them down. It wouldn't be easy. They were cunning, ruthless, and they had money on their side. But I had something they didn't have, the truth, and I was going to use it against them. I looked at Sarah. I need your help, I said. She hesitated, her fear warring with her conscience. I don't know, Jake, she stammered. I'm still scared. I nodded, understanding her hesitation. I know, I said, but you have a choice to make, Sarah. You can either be a victim or you can be a survivor. Which one are you going to be? Sarah, after a long, agonizing silence, finally nodded. I'll help you, Jake, she said, her voice trembling but firm. I'm tired of being afraid. And with that, the unlikely alliance was formed. We spent the next few hours huddled together, poring over details, strategizing, planning our counterstrike. I felt a strange sense of purpose, a focus I hadn't experienced since my days in the army. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice. It was about reclaiming my life. My plan was intricate, a carefully constructed web of calculated moves designed to expose Ashley and Michael's deceit and bring their carefully constructed world crashing down around them. I knew I was taking a risk. They were powerful, they had resources, and they wouldn't hesitate to fight dirty. But I was prepared to play their game. I had learned a few tricks during my time in the service, and I wasn't afraid to use them. Sarah's inside knowledge was invaluable. She knew their weaknesses, their vulnerabilities, the cracks in their facade. She provided me with documents, emails, Text messages, the digital breadcrumbs they had carelessly left behind. It was like putting together a jigsaw puzzle, each piece revealing a little more of their treachery. I meticulously gathered the evidence, documenting everything, preparing for the moment when I would unleash the truth. The key was timing. I had to wait for the right moment, the moment when they least expected it. I wanted to hit them where it hurt the most, to expose their lies in a way that would leave no room for denial. It was a high-stakes game, a dangerous dance on the edge of a cliff. But I was ready to dance. The fallout was explosive. I chose my moment carefully, waiting until Ashley and Michael thought they were in the clear, basking in the afterglow of their ill-gotten gains. I presented the evidence calmly and methodically, laying out their scheme for all to see. The room went silent. Ashley and Michael's faces paled, their carefully constructed masks crumbling before my eyes. They tried to deny it, of course, to spin their web of lies even further. But the evidence was irrefutable. The documents, the emails, the text messages, they spoke for themselves. Their carefully crafted narrative fell apart, revealing the ugly truth beneath. The reaction was swift and brutal. Their families were devastated. Their friends were shocked, and the social circles they craved turned against them in an instant. The media naturally had a field day. Their story became a tabloid sensation, a cautionary tale of greed and betrayal. Ashley and Michael's reputations were shattered, their names dragged through the mud. Their dreams of a life of luxury vanished like smoke. The consequences were severe. Legal battles, financial ruin, social ostracization. They lost everything. And I watched it all unfold, a strange mix of satisfaction and emptiness swirling within me. I had gotten my revenge. I had exposed their lies and brought them to justice. But it didn't bring me the joy I had expected. It didn't fill the hole in my heart. It just left me feeling empty. In the aftermath, I found myself alone. The initial thrill of victory faded, replaced by a quiet sense of melancholy. I had won the battle, but at what cost? I had destroyed their lives, but I had also destroyed a part of myself. The experience had changed me. I was no longer the naive, trusting man I had been before. I was hardened, cynical, wary of the world and the people in it. But I also learned a valuable lesson. I learned that trust is a fragile thing, easily broken, and almost impossible to repair. I learned that love can be a powerful force, but it can also be a weapon, used to manipulate and control. And I learned that revenge, while it may seem satisfying in the moment, ultimately leaves you feeling empty. I spent a lot of time reflecting on what had happened, trying to make sense of it all. I realized that holding on to the anger, the bitterness, the pain, it was only hurting me. It was like carrying a heavy burden, weighing me down, preventing me from moving on. So I made a conscious decision to let go, to forgive, not for their sake, but for my own. It wasn't easy, took time and a lot of soul searching. But eventually, I found a sense of peace, a quiet acceptance of what had happened. I started to rebuild my life, slowly, carefully, piece by piece. I focused on my work, my friends, my hobbies, the things that brought me joy. I learned to trust again, cautiously, selectively, understanding that vulnerability is a risk, but it's also what makes us human. And eventually I found love again. Not the whirlwind romance I had experienced with Ashley, but a deeper, more mature love, based on honesty, respect, and genuine connection. The experience had left scars, yes, but it had also made me stronger. I had faced betrayal, heartbreak, and injustice, and I had survived. And in the end, that's all that matters. I had learned that the best revenge is not to inflict pain on others, but to heal yourself and move on. To find happiness, not in their misery, but in your own life. And that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all.